Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Chip Fridrich. We thank our co-sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning Development Center. Wellspire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We thank our other co-sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Our news today presented by Sutherland and Belk, a Nashville-based injury law firm. Sutherland and Belk is committed to fighting for those who've been injured in car, motorcycle, and truck accidents. Check them out at sbinjurylaw.com. Well, the news not good for Vanderbilt in Game 1 of the College World Series Championship Series. Michigan 7, Vanderbilt 4, that's the final. Vanderbilt's pitching was poor, its hitting was not timely, and the Commodores now need to win 2 in a row on games on Tuesday and Wednesday nights in order to be the national champions. Our guest line today brought to you by Boll & Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on these sheets for years, but not the last 8 or 9 days, and I missed them. When I get back home, I will be back to my Boll & Branch sheets, and I look forward to that. Those sheets are fair trade certified. It means they're made under safe conditions by men and women who are treated and paid fairly. You can try them free for a month. They've got a return guarantee. You can return them free for 30 days, but you're not going to want to. If you have the sheets, then try the mattress. That was voted as best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That's spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy. Get $50 off your first set of sheets. We did not have a mailbag today due to time constraints, but our question and answer session is brought to you by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Are you in the market for auto, motorcycle, home, renters, or landlord insurance, or life or commercial insurance? You can call Josh at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He's my insurance agent. Hope you'll make him yours. Josh does a great job for me, and he will for you as well. Chip Fridrich joins me now. He was in Omaha last night for Vanderbilt's 7-4 loss to Michigan, as was I. Chip was in the stands. I was in the press box. Chip, thanks for joining us today. Just not a really good night for Vanderbilt on the whole. In fact, I think probably one of its worst performances of the year in Monday night's loss in the College World Series Finals. Now, Michigan had a lot to do with that, and we'll get to some of that later, but just not really what we expected to see in a lot of ways from Vanderbilt in Game 1.
No, good morning, Chris. It wasn't something we were accustomed to, and like a lot of Vanderbilt people I've bumped into here this morning in Omaha, they're putting away the shirt they wore last night and making all the superstitious actions as far as not wearing the same clothing and doing the same things, eating the same restaurants, but it just didn't have a feel from the start. I think Michigan was not that Vanderbilt wasn't enthusiastic. It just, you looked out at him talking about a team that is coached by Eric Bakich, a Corbin disciple, and it just kind of looked like Vanderbilt did in 2014 and in 2011. And I think they were the looser team, so to speak, and came out and showed it in the first inning and attacked Drake Fellows early in counts and when he was throwing strikes. So just not one that you had a feeling after they got the 2-run homer that separated the lead once again. It was just not going to be Vanderbilt's night.
No, and it was a weird game. There was some luck involved for Michigan. Michigan was 12 for 24 on balls in play, but on the other hand, Michigan left 14 guys on, so there was some bad luck that way that they stranded some base runners. But I thought that Tommy Henry really kind of controlled the game. That's kind of what you were afraid of, not just that he would beat Vanderbilt, but that he would go deep in games and allow them to conserve his bullpen. I think that's the number one thing that you didn't want to see happen, and it happened.
Yeah, and the thing that you talked about Michigan early on in the tournament was their ideal situation. They didn't have to go to their bullpen. We talked about the last podcast when the minute they stepped off the plane, if they could get complete games and not go deep in their pen, and that's what they continued last night. They only used 2 pitchers, so that has been their kind of strength all along, where they've got very talented arms, at least in the first 2 slots, a very talented first 3, actually. And Vanderbilt was trying to get into that pen, and you looked up in the fifth inning, and he had 45 pitches or so, and that's just exactly what they wanted, and that's what they got. So just not something that I think Tim Corbin expected, but you never know what's going to happen in these 3-game series. Vanderbilt's been here before. They've faced elimination. They've got the same pitcher that's on the mound that when they faced elimination against Duke. So we'll just see how they react. I think the attitude around that hotel this morning is probably one where there's not a lot of panic. They've got a lot of older guys, and I think they'll rise to the occasion. I even talked on the elevator this morning to a couple of Vanderbilt fans, and they asked me what I thought was going to happen. And, if you're sitting here thinking that the series was going to go 3 games, which I did, and my call was that Vanderbilt was going to win the series, then they were going to have to lose one of the first 2. So, and looking back on it, I think their number 1 guy was better than our number 1 guy. And I think pitching dominated last night, and they got ahead early, and that's what happened. We'll see on paper, at least for the last couple of weeks, if our number 1 guy can do the same and return the favor tonight.
Yeah, I was not shocked that they got beat in game 1. I think that if there was a concern about any of the 3 games, this one was the biggest concern. Boy, so many things to talk about. Let's start with the offense first. And I don't know, someone has made the note on our board, and I didn't chart how many sliders and stuff they saw, but the bats just have not been there in Omaha. I think they're hitting under 220 as a team. Some of that is they faced elite pitching, including the Henry kid that they faced last night. They faced a great staff in Louisville. But at the same time, this is also not the lineup we're accustomed to seeing. You saw Austin Martin rolling over a lot of things. You've seen J.J. Bleday swinging at bad pitches. Ethan Paul, other than his big hit, has not had a great series. Julian Infante has gone back to striking out over half the time. It's just not. And again, pitching has a lot to do with it, but it's not the lineup and the approach that we're accustomed to seeing.
No, you're talking about a team that for a week or so there was scoring 20 runs. It scored 20 plus runs in 2 games within a week span. I mean, you had guys, Julian Infante, hitting bombs against Alabama over the scoreboard, and those things that you're accustomed to, and J.J. Bleday and Austin Martin making it look like it's wiffle ball. And so that is the bats have definitely calmed down. It was nice to see Bleday get the home run, but in the regional, in the opening round of the regionals, you had guys popping up. Bleday and Austin Martin were lifting balls, and you had balls going just harmlessly in the outfield. And it seemed like last night, as you mentioned to me on a text, that it was a lot of guys rolling under balls and getting ground ball outs, and that seemed to be the case there. So it just is a little frustrating. I'm sure it's frustrating for the kids. It has to be that they're not the bats aren't here, and what they've done in the past, what they did against Louisville, so they would rebound and get the key hit like Ethan Paul did with the double against Louisville, and he was 0 for 3 at the time. Woke up in the last inning, got the game-winning hit, basically the game that tied the game. So I know that there's not a whole lot of time to rectify this, but if there's tonight's as good a time as any. But this team has always responded, and we'll see if they do when their backs are up against the wall. But yeah, it's the batting has definitely calmed down a little bit. Austin Martin had a great first game of the tournament against Louisville, and since then we just haven't seen a lot of balls in the gaps like we used to, that we're accustomed to. Balls, doubles and triples. That hasn't been happening as much in the last 2-3 games.
The pitching last night. Okay, let's start with Drake Fellows. Probably 30% of the time, he's great. 30% of the time, he is horrible. The other 40% of the time, he's generally both in the same game. And we saw it against, I remember the Illinois State game early in the year where he gave up the grand slam with no outs in the first and then throws 6 scoreless from there. And it was kind of more the same last night. But the problem is with that, you got a kid on the mound in Henry where there's a little less slack there for that kind of outing than there normally is. So that's not what you wanted to see. That's what you got. The bullpen from there, I don't know, Chip. It just seems like he leans on experience more than anything. I felt like just about everybody who does not throw strikes was either in the game last night or up in the bullpen. We still haven't seen Ethan Smith up in the bullpen. I don't know that he's been up at all in Omaha, which I don't really understand. They had Eater up last night, who's got better control and command than any of the guys that they used, or than A.J. Franklin or Hugh Fisher, who were both up. It just seems like he has gone all in on experience over strike throwing and dominance, and it just really bit them last night.
Yeah, and that leaving Raby in the game last night, I think there were several opportunities that he could have been pulled, but I think I'm not saying in any way that the towel's being thrown in there, but by leaving Raby in the ball game there, that's a staff that's saying, you know what, this is a 3-game series, and we're not going to burn any more arms, and which was probably the right call there. Now, the question whether Raby should have been a pitcher at all, I know there's some people on your board and out there that have said, wondered if he would ever see the ball in Omaha again after his performance the other night, but he did get it, and I'm not sure what's going on there without Smith ever being up, and Eater, of course, pitched, but you have some other guys in there. But we mentioned before, those 4 through 8, 5 through 9 guys getting their opportunities, and that could be the difference of whether they win a national title or not. Fellows, Chris, I think Drake Fellows is an extremely talented kid. I think he, if he continues to work on his pitching and his throwing strikes and his sliders, his sweeping slider, he's got a chance to do some things in pro ball. But right now, and well, for the year, I'll just say for the year, and I'm not saying I haven't been on the Fellows train, but he has been supported by a lot of runs early in games, and with the exception of the Mississippi State game in the SEC tournament, where it was a 1-0 game, he's had the benefit of doing that, and the book is out on him. I don't think there's any doubt. And you have a guy who struggles at some point in the game early, first, second inning. And usually when he's able to rebound and the team gets some offense behind him, he settles in. And there was an inning or two last night where he threw great. But, it was a 4-0 ball game, and it was too late against a team that's talented and it's on a roll like Michigan. So Fellows has, once again, benefited from offense that has protected him. And, he's got a very gaudy record. A lot of those games were on Friday nights in the conference where this team has exploded offensively, and he has been able to relax. And I don't think he looked very comfortable last night. I had some people send me text messages that he almost looked physically uncomfortable. It was hard to watch, was what another former player told me. And I don't know if it was just a question of maybe arm tiredness, if he was nervous, if he had a rep, just wasn't get too caught up in the moment. But I've been worried about this for quite a while here and I think Tim Corbin has alluded to it, Chris, that he has that moment early in the first or second inning where he struggles, and it's been predominant throughout the season. And last night he wasn't able to pitch his way out of it. And more importantly, the team wasn't able to bail him out of it offensively because of who was on the mound for Michigan.
Well, here were their pitching options in relief last night, and I'm going to go through base runners per innings pitch, which is a lot like whip, except you add in hit batsman, which is a much bigger factor at the college level than it is at the pro. Base runners per innings pitch, Raby 1.62, Fisher, who warmed up, 1.73, King, who pitched, 1.78. You have Smith at 1.18. He didn't even throw, didn't even get up, and Eater was up. He was 1.17, but they sat Eater down at some point. And free pass rates. This is walks and hit batsman per inning. Raby 14%, Fellows at 12%, Fisher, who warmed up, 18%, and then you go to Eater, 12%. Smith is 16%, but a lot of that was early in the year. I bet his rate has been probably 2/3 of that at most over the last 2 months. And then King, 18%. Now, the one thing for King was he'd not given up a home run all year, and then he gave up one on an 0-2 pitch, so maybe there was some bad luck in there. But again, it just seems like he prefers experience, and he's going to go with the guys that have been there for the longest and that he trusts, and maybe he sees something in practice that we don't. I understand that. But just in terms of what we see in game performance, I don't know. It just seems like the guys that have been more effective are often the guys left in the garage when the night's over.
Right. Well, but that always hasn't been the case with Corbin and Brown. Usually he's a guy who's always, these two guys have always been who's pitching the best as of late. And if you've been a senior, and we saw that with Tyler Beatty in 2014 when he kind of fell apart at the end of the year, and he was a guy who was a junior and was heralded, and they basically sat him down in Omaha after his first performance. He didn't see the mound again. So it's something obviously that we don't know about. It's something that they might be seeing in bullpen sessions, but I think it is a little different process and a little different thought that they're using here, who they're going to in the pen. And we're going to have to see how it goes tonight, because you're going to have Rocker, who, he's not going to, he went, sixth last outing here in Omaha. Maybe it was 7, but they're going to have to go to the pen. Of course, they got Tyler Brown, who's still there available for the next 2 games. And it's just all hands on deck for these next 2 games. Whoever's ready and whoever's able, they're going to throw them. But we'll get indication because they did burn some arms last night, and see that they go to tonight if needed. Hopefully they won't need to, but we'll have to see.
Well, I think if you can now, you try to use just Rocker, Hickman, and Brown. Here are free pass and base runners per inning pitch rates. Brown 4% and 0.9, Hickman 8% and 1.02, Rocker 7% and 1.19. Of course, that is his base runners have been on a steep decline the last couple of months. And I think the only concern there is Hickman has been a little shaky lately. Didn't have his control or command maybe in the last start, and of course had the same thing against Duke. So you worry a little bit because he built up some of those numbers in midweek games. So that's a little bit of a concern. But I think if you can get through and not have to use anybody other than those guys, I do trust Smith and I trust Eder. I think Eder would probably be your 4th guy, and Smith maybe your 5th. That's the way I see it. I don't know how they see it, but You would think that the guys that you saw last night would be done based on pitch counts and performance, but I think from a pitching situation, you have to feel like they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and you just thought that if you could have gotten through game 1 last night. I know I told some people when it was a 1-run game, if we could just break their heart and come out with just a win we didn't deserve, that the feeling would be a lot different today as far as who you pitched and who you went to, but of course that didn't happen. So yeah, I think you're right on the money as far as who you think that the next guys would be. Hopefully it won't be a problem. It would be great to have Michigan's fortune of having a complete game type performance from Rocker tonight. I think he's going to be ready. I think that he's poised for this. Tim in the press conference mentioned that he's not a freshman anymore and doesn't look at him that way. And I think this kid is mature beyond his years as far as how he preps. And, it's going to be a mouthful for Michigan here to handle him. I mean, they know what they're up against. I know Bakich probably knows our recruits just as well as his. I mean, he knows who we've got, and those kids do too. They're still going to play loose, I know. And you wonder if the moment of their being 1 win away from a national championship is going to come into play, and they might be a little more fluttered. Their hearts a little more fluttered than they should be. But they did play very loose last night. We'll see how they rebound tonight.
Well, Eric Bakich said last night, because now I think probably the biggest question is, what does Michigan get out of its pitching the rest of the way? Bakich said last night they could start Criswell today. They could go committee. Criswell, of their 3 starters, is by far the worst, and worst is a relative term. He's given up 1.35 runners per inning. He is giving up free pass rate 13%. That's a little bit higher than Fellows. A strikeout rate of 26. That's about what Fellows does. He does keep the ball in the park. He gives up home runs 1.4% of the time, which is pretty good. He threw 114 pitches in the regional. He threw 95 in a start in a super. In Omaha, he's gone 37 pitches back on the 15th. 36 back on the 21st, and 9 tonight. I don't know if they'll go committee or just go Criswell off the bat, but it will be interesting to see how long he can go. I think I think Vanderbilt will win this game on Tuesday just because I think the pitching matchup tilts heavily in its favor, and it'll be interesting to me. I mean, look, there's no giving, and Criswell's still a good pitcher just compared to Henry and Kauffman. He's clearly a notch below those guys, but I don't know. It's almost like if you could get it this way, you almost would hope that this is one of those games that's close and maybe they go to Kauffman to try to close it out or something and they hit him and get him out tomorrow. I think that's probably unlikely, but I'm rambling here a little bit. But I think today's pitching is interesting, not just because they need to win today, does Vanderbilt, because it also may affect what they do tomorrow. And, of course, Michigan does not trust its bullpen. They've thrown the same three pitchers in Omaha over and over. They've not used anybody else. They used a lot of guys in the regionals and the supers, but nobody in that bullpen has a strikeout-to-walk ratio greater than 1.6, which is bad. That's why they don't trust them. So I'm really interested. I've given you a rambling monologue there, but I'm really interested to see what happens with pitching today.
Yeah, it's all about matchups tonight, and I think you would see a situation. Let's just propose that Vanderbilt got up ahead and Rocker was cruising and they got up to a heavy lead. I think you would see Eric Bakich do the same thing Corbin did last night, perhaps go some guys in the pen to conserve for game 3. So you got a little cat and mouse here. I saw Bakich comment in the press conference where, he said he's going to pitch a right-hander or a left-hander. He would just have to see, which was very Corbin-esque. Tim Corbin-esque, I thought. And it's just, we'll just have to see how this matches up. I think Vanderbilt, I'm sure Las Vegas has a line on this. I think Vanderbilt will be the favorite tonight with the pitching matchup. And, you've, as people have commented here to me just in passing, is now Vanderbilt has a guy who pitched a perfect game, ever pitched a no-hitter, and he's pitching the second game. That kind of puzzles people that, the Kumar Rocker has had the publicity he's had nationally, and he's pitching game 2. So, those are for people who don't know, and that as far as Tim's rhythm of pitching guys and keeping to his rotation and not changing it. So, yeah, well, it's going to be a definite chess match here tonight. See what happens. I would presume that Michigan would try to stay away from their pen as much as possible. That they have to go to it, they won't go too deep because now this becomes a winner-take-all if Vanderbilt pulls it out tonight.
Well, if Kauffman goes game 3, he's a pretty good pitcher. He has got a 2.39 ERA. He's a 2.79 ERA. His 2.39 is his component, which is what your ERA ought to be with your base runners. So it backs up that he's got a good ERA. He's given up 1.4 runners an inning. He is striking out 20%, which is kind of low. He's not a strikeout guy. He's giving free passes 8% of the time, which is really good. That's right where Mason Hickman is. He's giving up a home run 1.1% of the time, so he keeps it in the park. I look at his numbers, and without having really seen him pitch, looks like he is a guy who does not walk a lot of guys and gives up soft contact, which right now is exactly what's giving them issues in Omaha. Sounds a lot like Will Smith and Tommy Henry.
Right. Well, the best has got to come alive for Vanderbilt in order to make that happen. I mean, the pitching matchup is in their favor, and they're not going to win a title if the bats don't wake up, if they don't get deep into counts and drive balls and do what they got them here. You're just not going to just reinvent yourself here in a 3-game series for the national title. So these older guys, I think it's just a matter of them showing the lead early in the lineup. You're going to have your first 2 guys play like they did in the middle part of the season most of the year. Hopefully Bleday's home run bomb, which it was, it got out of there quick. It was a rocket, and that'll be something that will get him going offensively. So a lot of baseball to be played. That's why the Toma 2 boys here who are with me, you don't get if it was a 1-game championship and it was decided by that one game, we'd all be going home like basketball and football and packing our bags and heading back to Nashville. But that's not it. And I think there's a lot of ball to be played, and hopefully tonight's performance will get us back on track.
By the way, pitch counts for Kauffman in his 4 NCAA tournament starts in order: 123, 104, 101, 100. So again, a guy who goes deep in games. If they get to a game 3, if they can get him out early, I think that the advantage certainly swings to Vanderbilt.
Oh yeah, and that's got to be their mission. It's got to be I knew we were in trouble last night. Again, as I mentioned before, when that pitch count was in the upper 40s, 50 in the fifth inning, and you knew that he was going to go out there and stay. Their starter was going to stay as long as possible. So that's got to be their attack mode tonight, is getting into that pen. We talked about that last week. It's still got to be the same case.
Okay, Chip, I will be at the game tonight. You'll be at the game tonight. I've got to go home as soon as that game is over. So I'll be watching Game 3 from a television somewhere, either in Nashville on the way home to Nashville. I think you'll be out there for the whole thing. But anyway, safe travels to you and your family. Tell people about your real estate business and where they can find you guys.
Sure, Chris. Fridrich and Clark Realty is our company, and been around for over 60 years, and it's still hot time of summer to buy a home or sell your home. So call one of our agents. We'll hook you up. Call me personally. I'll hook you up with someone who is featured in your neighborhood, your area, town. We've got a seasoned group of 170 real estate professionals who do this full time. They're not selling their aunt or uncle a house or their cousin and selling one or two houses. We got professional agents who are knowledgeable, who can walk you through the entire process of buying a home. The market is still hot in Nashville. Homes still more tilted towards a seller's market. And you need someone, if you're on the buy side or the sell side, to negotiate that process for you, to walk you through and give you some timely advice and professional advice at that, of how to sell or buy your home. So give one of our agents a call. You can check us out on the web as well at frederickandclark.com. Again, over 60 years of experience of helping Nashville and Middle Tennesseans for their buying and selling needs for real estate. So give us a call. Give me a call personally. I'd love to help you out.
Thanks a bunch, Chip.
Yeah, we'll hope to talk to you with some good news maybe tomorrow. We can do one up here tomorrow if you'd like, and good news for the Commodores, and we'll have a winner-take-all, hopefully, scenario for Game 3.
Yeah, tomorrow's probably going to be unlikely because I'll be on the road early in the morning, one way or the other. But we will certainly do a wrap-up on this after the series is over, for good or bad or whatever.
Sounds good, Chris.
All right,
take care.
You too. He's Chip Fridrich. I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast. We'll have more coming later in the week.